Welcome to the Love Your Life and Yourself podcast, the weekly show where science meets soul and mom chaos meets mind mastery. You're not just a mom. You're a woman with dreams, a career, a body that needs care, and a soul that craves more. This podcast is your permission slip to stop surviving and start thriving in motherhood, health, career, and stress resilience. I'm your host, Dr. Ashley Rath, and every week we bring you actionable insights and transformative conversations to help you create a life you truly love. From evidence-based wellness strategies to authentic self-discovery, we'll explore what it takes to thrive through expert interviews and real unfiltered stories. Let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back to Love Your Life and Yourself. I am your host, Dr. Ashley, and I'm so excited to be here with you where we're talking about all the things. We're talking about not just surviving the chaos of motherhood, marriage, and running a business or your career life, but we're really rewriting the way that we think about it all, which leads me into today. So what we're going to do today is walk you through something that seems so basic, yet it feels like it shouldn't really matter, but it does. And it is your thoughts. Your thoughts are running your life, not your schedule, not your kids, not your boss, not even your past, your thoughts. So in this episode, what we're doing is we're diving into this chain reaction that your brain is constantly being triggered by all day long. And what we're here to do is I want to teach you how to stop the spiral of the negative thinking or the thinking that maybe just isn't serving you, to be able to take back your power and actually really step into the reality that you want and you want to create. So you stop living in a reality that sucks, right? No one wants that. No one wants to be exhausted and tired and burnt out all the time. We want to actually live in a life that we love, and we want to love ourselves at the same time, right? Okay. So here's the breakdown. So if you remember anything from this podcast, I want you to start to remember this cascade of how our thoughts are shaping our reality. I like to remember things with an acronym. So think about your thoughts with this acronym. So it's ETER. So it stands for experience, thought, emotion, action, result. So we all have experiences in life, right? This is the one part of the cascade that we do not have control over. We want to have control over all of it. We want to have control over our in-laws, over our spouse, over our kids, over politics, etc. But this is the one thing that we don't have control over, is our experiences. Now, we can kind of create some of the experiences, but many of them are out of our control. The next step is your thoughts, and this is where we're going to dive in deep today. But our thoughts, when we have an experience, we think about it in a certain way. When we have that thought will create an emotion. That emotion could be happiness, joy, love, appreciation, gratitude, or it could be hopelessness, despair, anxiety, grief, sadness, loneliness, etc. So how we interpret that experience will give us a thought, and then it'll give us an emotion. Based off of that emotion, we will then have an action. Our emotion fuels the action. And even inaction is action. So maybe you don't do anything about it, which is still the action. And then that action is going to give us the result. So you might think that your life is being shaped by your circumstances, but in reality, your interpretation of those experiences, aka the thoughts, most of us automatically assign to those circumstances. That's what's running the world. That's what's running your reality. So if you want a different reality, you want to get more fit, you want to have energy, you want to have vitality, you want your finances to be rocking and rolling, you actually have to start back up the ladder with your thoughts. Most of us are running on autopilot. We have no conscious awareness of what we're actually thinking. Let me give you an example. A year and a half ago, I decided I was going to get healthy. I was done having kids. I had faith about 6 months prior. I was at the heaviest I had ever been, the most tired, exhausted, fatigued I've ever been. And I was just not in a good, healthy place. Mentally, emotionally, I was pretty high functioning. I went to work, I did all the things, but I was just emotionally and physically, quite frankly, burnt out. I could function pretty well. However, what I started to do is, we're going to get into this in another episode, but I did some lab tests and I tested my cortisol levels, my stress levels, and actually they weren't even high. I had been in such a high stress mode for so long, they were completely depleted and flatlined. And we're going to talk about cortisol and stress response in another episode. But I wanted to share this with you because I had a mindset shift that I was going to do something different, right? I told you the story about Bo. That was kind of the catalyst, but a little bit later, that's when I really, really started diving into getting healthy. And what I realized is, in that moment of, okay, what am I going to do, right? We all go to the do. What I started paying attention to is my thoughts around my health. And the one thing that repeated in my mind as a loop is, I'm tired. So I used to wake up and immediately think, I'm tired. Before my feet even hit the floor, I'd wake up and be like, oh, I'm so tired. And then shockingly, I was exhausted all day. And yes, I get there's hormones involved. My cortisol was whacked out. My nutrition wasn't the greatest, which all play a role. But for me to change my trajectory, I had to start with my thoughts. I realized that morning, I actually did an experiment with myself. I said, I'm tired over 20 times before I even left the house. Yes, 20 times I said I'm tired. No wonder why my emotion was triggered by that, and then my action and results never changed. I couldn't think of anything else. I couldn't even recognize the areas of my life where I was vital or where I did have energy, which there's definitely those areas. And what I realized in that moment is, I got to stop that. Holy crap. I cannot continue to say I'm tired, yet feel vital and energized all day. So in this process of becoming aware of our thoughts, that conscious awareness, right? We're going to be firing our prefrontal cortex, is where your reality will start to change. But if we're not aware of how we think, nothing's going to change, because remember, our thoughts create the emotion, and then the emotion creates the action, and the action creates the result. I give this analogy a lot, but here's the deal about experiences, right? I kind of told you that we can't necessarily control our experiences. And to be honest, there's going to be some really crappy things that happen to really good people. And I don't know why that happens. We have deaths. We have, for me personally, I was sexually assaulted in college, and I've had a miscarriage, and I passed that baby at 19 weeks, right? Those are experiences that I am essentially out of my control. I was not responsible for them. However, it took me a while to come to the point to realize that it was my perception of that experience that's going to give me the life that I want or I don't want. So let me give you an example. I I joke with people that when I do talks, there's always someone in the room that loves snakes. So I'm sure I have a listener on here that loves snakes. I am not one of them. I have a very sympathetic fight or flight stress response. I'm not neutral. We always have a handful that are neutral. Most people are either neutral or they tend to not like snakes, but there's always a handful that love snakes. To me, if I see one, it gives me straight up anxiety. My blood pressure will increase, my heart rate goes up, my respirations increase. And so, like I talked about in the first episode, that stress response, that fight or flight, that sympathetic response, I'm in full stress mode if I see a snake. And remind you, I live in Minnesota. There is nothing poisonous here, right? There's no poisonous snakes here. So I really shouldn't be all that freaked out by them. But I am. And so we have this experience of me seeing a snake. It could be even just out in nature, nothing crazy. It's not attacking me. It's not doing anything bad to me. And I have this full-blown stress response. This person next to me who likes snakes is experiencing the same scenario, right? They see the snake, they see it do the same thing that I saw it do. Yet, their reality is so different. They see this beautiful, majestic creature. They're looking at the patterns on it. They're looking how, beautiful it can move through the grass and how just smooth it is. Yet I don't see any of that when I see the snake. What is the difference in this scenario? It's all about our perception. How we perceive our environment will make the thought processes. It will actually start wiring our thoughts of our perception of it. And then that perception is going to give you an emotion. For me, it's fear and anxiety. For that other person, it might spark curiosity or excitement. Maybe they love snakes, or it's fun and inviting, right? Two different emotions. And yet the next one, the action, me, I'm running. I don't like these things. Like I'm literally sprinting away or jumping up on a table. I'm getting away from this thing. Their action is they might move closer. They might get slower so they can see it better. And yet our results are very, very different. This person is in a calm, collected, in a gratitude state, yet I'm in this fight or flight stress mode. Same scenario, different responses. Can you see now how we can start to implement this into our daily lives? So we all have these experiences, right? Most are out of our control, and some we definitely don't love. For me, that's snakes. For me, that was an experience of a miscarriage. And looking back, it was awful. It was absolutely terrible. And I still am saddened by it. However, I'm also really, really, really grateful for it because we wouldn't have our third. I wanted 3 and then we'd be done. We wouldn't have faith if that wouldn't have happened. So I feel like even if it still is sad and you still have grief and you're still processing, we can learn and grow from it. It still may be a sad scenario. That may never change. But what can we learn from this? How can we grow from this? How can we share our story to be able to help other people? And by no means am I a counselor. I'm not trying to get you through the really, really crappy things. But afterwards, after we have this experience, now it's our responsibility to have a thought process that is going to shape our reality for the reality that we want. Does this make sense? I hope it does. I can't see any hands raised right now, but I'm going to share with you a little bit of science behind this. So Dr. Anthony Webb he has done research around the chemistry of thoughts. And this is his quote, "Our thoughts trigger a chemical reaction in our bodies. When we think negatively, fear takes root, leading to anxiety, doubt, and hesitation. Controversially, positive beliefs fuel enthusiasm, hope, and aspiration." End of quotes. So what does this actually translate to be? Our body is responding to our mind every single second. So let me break this down. When you have a negative thought what happens? The hypothalamus is really the boss of your autonomic system. Your autonomic system is really everything that just runs automatically in your body, all your organs, glands, etc. Once this hypothalamus gets the red code, essentially stress, from the amygdala, it activates your HPA axis. Again, we're going to go into the HPA axis in another episode, but that's your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So what happens is you have this emotional response. The amygdala is this small almond-shaped structure deep into the brain, and it's actually part of our limbic system, which is our emotional center of the brain. So you can think of the amygdala like your brain's threat detector, just like the snake. So if I saw a snake, it would ignite that amygdala. It's not logic. It's not thoughtful. It's really just primal. It's fast and it's always scanning. So when something happens, maybe someone cuts you off in traffic, or your toddler starts screaming in Target, or you get a passive aggressive email, your amygdala is the first thing to react. It doesn't stop to ask, hey, is this really dangerous? It just goes, uh-oh, threat, boom. And now that's where this stress response gets ignited. So if you are constantly under this stress response because of your thoughts, that stress response, that HPA axis is always going to be igniting. And in the end, what happens is your body, your adrenals are pumping cortisol, adrenaline out because it thinks there's a tiger or a snake in the room all the time. When in reality, that stress response is, man, I don't know if I have enough money in my bank to be able to cover rent or groceries. Man, I don't know where my next client is going to come from. Oh my goodness, I had this really terrible conversation with a client and I am fueled and fired up. My toddler is losing it. I haven't slept in a couple days. I am having disagreements with my spouse or partner, right? Our body thinks that we might die. So it sends this red flag, red lights, sirens out to say, hey, stress response, you need to be able to run away or fight, the fight or flight response, to save your body. When in reality, it just might be friends that say something crappy to you, or even a random person on Facebook comment and throw a nasty message out at you. Or it could be work stress. It could be relationship stress, right? And so what we need to understand from a science standpoint is that it seems too easy, right? Just change your thoughts and your reality will change. However, when we start changing our thought processes, our brain function starts to change too. In the opposite side, when we have a positive thought, what happens then? Right? We actually stimulate the dopamine and serotonin production, and this enhances the motivation and emotional resilience that we all want. This podcast is all about stress resilience, which includes emotional, thought, financial, physical resilience. So when you think a positive thought, let's say like, I'm proud of how I handled that. I'm so thankful for this quiet moment. That's me. A lot of times when I get a quiet moment, I'm like, this is so good. I love this. This challenge is a challenge, but it's helping me grow, right? I'm grateful for the green grass. I love that beautiful tree out there. It doesn't have to be astronomical. It could be, gosh, man, am I grateful for indoor plumbing. An outhouse would suck. Right? I'm so grateful for electricity. Like, just think about what we can actually start changing. And what happens is literally you get douses of serotonin and dopamine. And what happens is your prefrontal cortex, that's the part of your brain behind your forehead. If you're watching me, I'm like tapping my forehead right now. And this is where we're conscious and intentional with our thinking. And that's where we have to start to become aware of our thoughts, because the majority of our thoughts, it depends what research you look, but it's 90 to 95% of our thought processes are subconscious, meaning we're not aware of them. We just are on autopilot. So when we start to become aware of our thoughts, like, hey, I'm tired, or saying I'm tired 20 times, but subconsciously, I didn't even realize I was saying it that many times. But when we start to become aware of our thoughts, we have so much more control over them. There's this story that I like to share about. So back in the day, my husband and I, as I'm telling you this, we've been married for just under 11 years. And no shocker, I used to be kind of a hothead, kind of spicy. And we farm, right? So we know that the busy seasons are springtime and harvest, where he's putting in a lot more hours to get the crops in and out. And back in the day, I'm still learning this, right? By no means am I perfect, and my thoughts can get a hold of me occasionally, but it's becoming less and less. But back in the day, I remember him being gone, and I believe we probably had Henry, maybe Bo at the time. And I remember I was cooking dinner, and I was so frustrated because he had been gone for multiple days in a row. And I was like, ugh, I always have to do everything by myself. I'm taking care of the kids myself. I'm putting them to bed by myself. Like, gosh, it took two people to create this child. Why is he always gone? And I am just like replaying this reel in my head, right? I don't know about you, but I've been there a couple times where I have made this story so concrete, and I'm thinking in my head, boy, when he walks through that door, he is going to hear it from me. He is going to just feel how furious I am. And you have written this story. And he walks through the door, and what do? You are shooting bullets at him. You're like, poof, 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 poof. I have done this. I have done this. You're selfish. I can't believe you haven't thought of us, and etc. Right? You have this whole story written out, and he walks in the door and he's like, whoa, what happened to you? He was just in his merry tractor, like doing life. He wasn't thinking those things. Yet I created a story. I had this thought process that I was going to be so pissed at him when he walked through the door, right? I had already created this fight in my head before it even happened. You want to talk about your thoughts creating your reality? I created this, and I did this all the time after time. Bless his heart. He stuck with me through my spiciness. But when we start to take responsibility for our thoughts, we stop blaming others for our reality. Let me say that again. We stop blaming others for our reality. We stop pointing the fingers at our spouses. We stop pointing the fingers at our government, our president, our boss, our coworker, our kids. How many times have you said, oh, I don't have any time because my kids? Or I'm so tired because of my kids. Or you're blaming your spouse because you don't have any free time yet. You haven't set a boundary. They don't even know you need some more time or help. So when we start taking responsibility for our thoughts, our whole reality will change. And I know you're thinking this is voodoo stuff, but I'm telling you, there's so much science to back it up. Right? When we are literally firing in a different part of our brain, that's neuroplasticity. We are rewiring the brain that we have to fire in a healthy way. You want to talk about increased stress resilience? Hello? If you're not firing in your stress response, your cortisol is not being released. When you have high levels of cortisol or depleted cortisol levels, really, that's going to throw all your other hormones off. It's going to throw your insulin resistance, or it might create insulin resistance. It might create this dysponesis or imbalance of gut flora. And now your health is crap, right? And it has to do with your thought processes. So one thing that I ask everyone to do as homework is start to get aware. When you notice a thought, if you can stop it right when it begins, that's going to give you the fastest results. So thoughts have momentum. So if we hold a thought for approximately 17 seconds, it will create another thought like it, for the good or the worse, right? So if you are looking to have healthier thoughts, you can give those healthy, positive, joyful, loving thoughts more momentum by thinking similar things. Let's say you are grateful for 5 minutes. I know this just sounds too easy to be true, but there's science behind it because you're rewiring the brain. Same with anxiety or fear. If you keep thinking the same thoughts, they're going to start to have momentum and you're going to go down the rabbit hole of all of these thoughts that aren't necessarily serving you. And they're definitely not creating the life that you want to live. But we have to back up the river a little bit and realize that those thoughts are creating the emotion that you want or don't want, which in the end is giving you the reality. So if you have a reality that you don't love, we got to get a hold of those thoughts. We have to start becoming aware. We have to start reframing those autopilot thoughts that are just on repeat. Dr. Webb actually says, I knew I had it in here. I'm looking at my notes. 95% of our actions are subconscious, right? That's insanity. So as we get more aware, we got to catch that thought. If you can stop, if you're like in San Diego and you're in one of those super hilly spots and you forget to put your car in brake mode or park mode on, and it starts rolling, you could probably stop it at the top of the hill, but there's no way in heck that you're going to stop it at the bottom. That's how our thoughts work. The more momentum they get, the more we have like it. So if you don't want that thought, you must change it at the top of the hill. One way to easily do that is with your breath. So breath work, square breathing, etc. But start to become aware of those triggers. Like me, I needed to become aware of, for physically, I'm tired. Like, what are the symptoms that you're feeling and how are you talking to yourself? But then you tell me, hey, Ashley, yes, I'll say that I have energy when I'm not feeling tired anymore. Or when I get the money, that's when I'm going to start being grateful for the money, right? I got to see it to believe it. And that's how most people think, right? They live in this outside in world where they're like, when I get this, when I have this, when I feel this, then I'll be happy. Then I'll be joyful. Then I'll become stress resilient. Then I'll have the marriage that I want. If he just does this, then our marriage will be saved. But it's got to start with you. We have to start catching those thoughts before they get momentum. And ask yourself, most of our thoughts are fear and anxiety. Ask them, is this true? And or is this helpful? Right? You know you're on a good thought process if you feel good. That's a great indicator. People ask me like, well, what do you do? How do you know? You feel good or you're neutral. When you feel crummy, you're probably not on a thought pattern that's serving you. When you feel good, you probably are. Or if you're neutral, if you're joyous, if you're full of life, if you're energetic, if you're happy, you're probably on a thought train that's going to lead to a reality that you want. And the opposite is true. You can start to reframe those thoughts too. Take, I'll never get caught up, and I have so much to do, to I'm doing the best that I can with what I have. Right? Start to reframe those thoughts, start to become aware of them, and then stack them, right? That's where that momentum comes in. Write down your wins, write down where you became aware and how you changed that thought. No matter what you did, at the end of the day, if you can name off 3 wins that happened that day, those wins will have momentum. So when you wake up the next day, you're like, whoa, yesterday I had these. So pre-frame your nightly routine of like, gosh, I'm so grateful for this and this and this. And in the morning, you become more grateful. So here's the truth. Your thoughts are either the cage or the key. So what you repeat becomes what you believe. And what you believe shapes how you feel. And how you feel drives how you act. And how you act builds your life. So this week, pick one reoccurring thought, just one, that's not serving you and not giving you the reality that you want, and flip it. That's it. That's the work. I know it sounds too easy to be true, but it's so powerful. So if this hit home with you, share it with someone who's been stuck. Hit the like button. And until next time, take care of you and keep choosing to love your life and yourself. Thanks for tuning in to Love Your Life and Yourself. I hope today's episode gave you one more tool or one more truth to help you thrive in your health, happiness, and resilience. Remember, loving yourself isn't selfish, it's leadership. And it's the foundation for building a life that actually feels like yours. If this spoke to you, hit that follow button, leave a review, and send it to a friend who needs to hear it. And if you want to dive even deeper, grab a copy of my #1 best-selling book, Love Your Life and Yourself. It's the heart behind this podcast, and it's helped thousands of women step into a life they actually love. You can find it at drashleyrath.com or through the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care of you and keep choosing to love your life and yourself.